welcome. Well, I just had something come to mind. Basically, when we're talking about the fact that good always wins in the end, what we're saying is that the evolutionary path that chooses to examine the self and be introspective and study patterns and learn how to change and grow, this is the pattern that leads to more expansiveness and doesn't have it's in a process of removing blind spots, so it's gonna be more intelligent and thus more aware and thus more powerful. And so this is why intelligent, aware, powerful beings are not seeking to cause harm or unknowingly causing lots of harm, because they're highly aware. Again, this is why good wins over evil. Again, good and evil are relative terms and mean completely different things in different scenarios. But this is why self-examination. This is the key when they're talking about anything religious or spiritual or growth or anything or making it through ascension. It's all about self-examination. It's all about relationship with self and being really clear and transparent with relationship with self. That's all there really is, because our relationship with ourself, how we see ourself, is then becomes our lens on how we see the rest of the world. And so people who spend a lot of time changing their narrative and adjusting their narrative and calling ourselves on our problems, changing them and doing the hard work, then we expand and we become more. We become what we were before, as well as more, and the ability to choose which we want to be consciously. And this expansiveness, this more, is more intelligence and more power. It has the ability to affect more realms because it's the ability to be aware of more realms. So this is why when we're with someone who's very intelligent but very narcissistic, we can see how they have blind spots. But there's certain areas they can't go. Their psyche can't go to certain areas without shutting down, because it's a limitation of the consciousness. And so this is why, the forces of darkness operate under narcissism. That's their basic operating system. It's hiding from self rather than examining self. So this is why the key to ascension. This is why good always wins. This is how we know we're working towards the good. We're putting good effort towards the good. Is when we are looking at how we can be more introspective, how we can study ourselves more, call ourselves out more, figure out why we aren't getting what we want in life, and figuring out what about our behavior we can do about it. Again, there's no such thing as guilt. There's no such thing as even problems. There's situations and there's things that we can do about it. And when we start to just see life as a bunch of situations and things we can do about it, and just be in that mode all the time, then we're problem solvers and we're expanding ourselves and our capabilities. And then we become the doers and we become the brilliant people and the accomplished people, just because we're doing it in a world full of people who very few people are doing anything these days. So this is why it's so important, again, to have a daily spiritual practice of some sort, or to start working towards one, or just daily routines that we're working on, self-accountability. This is why self-accountability is so important, because there's a mass broadcast AI mind control system that gets everyone to be narcissists by traumatizing us all, blah, 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 blah. I've talked about this before, but it's fairly uniform, so everybody's affected, even if we know it's affecting us. There's no magic pass that says, oh, I know about it now, I'm all spiritually cured. No, we actually have to, when we get frustrated, figure out why we were frustrated, and figure out all the scenarios and all the pieces, and maybe do some role playing and write it out, or whatever our process is of examining and revisiting it, so that we've been integrated into all of our being and it's not stuck there as a frustration. Like, this is the process. This is what it is. This is like when we get mad at someone else, we might still keep some of the information on what made us mad. There might have been something valid or reason to have anger towards someone, and we might adjust our boundaries or whatever according to that. But we're also going to really look at why we reacted, because the reason we reacted is often due to a trigger that we can then figure out where it came from, some past trauma, go back to that past trauma and release that, because it's the trigger that ended up being the major problem. Yeah, we might be angry about something we were allowed, perfectly good to be angry about, but it's the triggering of the anger that maybe made us say or do something we didn't really mean to do, or just not feel as good as we wanted to feel. And instead of just feeling kind of the anger that's appropriate for what's happening, that allows us to separate our consciousness from what's happening, rather than a lingering anger that builds or does anything more. So again, this is how we're saying that, emotions are here to tell us something. We're not supposed to hold on to them. So just identify what that is, and then work on clearing it out. Sometimes it's not just quote unquote letting go. We're not just hippies letting go. Sometimes that process of letting go is actually, going and figure out where it is and why it's there, and confronting it and doing, there's a number of processes. Even mainstream therapy has embraced certified a process called EMDR, which is essentially going back into trauma and then having someone else make sure that your conscious mind is coming to the forefront while you're reliving that moment. And the experience of being in the past moment and being in the present moment at the same time just clears out the trauma. It's this a certified trick, and it seems to work really, really, really well. So EMDR, I'd highly suggest. It's still relatively new, so it's not like there's a bunch of people. But if you type in EMDR therapy or something like that, you'll probably see if there's anybody in your area practicing that. I'm very excited about that. That would be actually something. I'm not going to go out and go for a school and go through all that nonsense just to become a therapist to do that. But I would be excited about doing that kind of work or receiving that kind of work. I've reached out to people in my community. I think there's someone who has received that over long term and had good results with it. So I'm going to set up a trade with them and offer them, I don't know, some of my chanting or whatever they want from me in particular in exchange for them giving a mini session from what they've observed from their sessions. Anyway, so all these tools that we can be using right now, they're all really important. When we're talking about the healing work, when we're talking about being the change, it's about doing this. Because when we clarify ourselves, then we're able to be there for ourselves and be more genuine with ourselves and respond to external events with more clarity and more steadiness. So that's really what it's all about, is that when we're not being triggered as much because we've worked past our issues, then we can just be conscious more and be present more, and that solves most of the problems. Most of the problems are just from getting triggered. That's the basics. So this is again why self-awareness and introspection and calling ourselves out and being responsible. We're told by society that we're not guilty unless someone else catches us, and we just kind of have to let go of that and say that no, there's no such thing as guilt, and we're going to be the ones calling ourselves out. We're going to be the ones looking for our problems. We're going to let go of looking for validation on how we're perfect from other people, and we're going to start getting to work on our imperfections. I mean, this is what life is we identify problems and we create solutions. So this concept that we just hide from ourselves all the time and accept our flaws, that's, devolution. That's how we stay stagnant and die. No, we want to be changing ourselves all the time. We want to be identifying where we're insecure and why we're insecure. We want to be noticing that if someone triggers us, yes, create some space, maybe make sure we're not going to be around that person for a while or ever again, depending on what it is. But we're also going in and figuring out why we are triggered, because the trigger, that's is something separate than the offense that also happened. Someone might have been very offensive to us, but there's also a trigger we're responding to. So we're going to take the time to actually resolve it, because we noticed there's something trapped there that was causing us a problem that will probably cause a problem again, and is probably actively limiting our perspective on reality. So again, this is when people talk about learning from our triggers. It doesn't mean put up with abuse. It definitely does not mean that, we might have been triggered about something real and it's telling us to get out of there. But at the same time, the fact that we were triggered about it, instead of just calmly noticed that it probably wasn't the best place and calmly planned an exit strategy, this is what we're working on. So self-accountability, introspection are the way that we clarify our lens with which we see the rest of reality. And that is why this work is so important, because this is all about becoming more expansive and having more empathy. And we can't really be more expansive and have more empathy without the actual practice of clarifying ourselves and becoming more expansive. All right, just a quick one, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.